So, welcome to Tuesday at 10, and we'll get started here with some industry updates. And so, one of the things I had mentioned earlier this year and towards the end of last year was this lawsuit, this buyer lawsuit called Batten, that uh, was pending against NAR. And last week, that was filed in Chicago, and last week an Illinois judge granted the NAR request to stay proceedings, which basically puts that lawsuit on hold, or pause. And NAR requested that stay because it involves similar allegations to those made in another pending case, which is Tukuri versus At World Properties. And NAR entered into a proposed settlement with those plaintiffs to secure a release of liability for NAR members and local and state associations and more. And so that proposed settlement was announced on April 10th. And so basically the stay on the Batten lawsuit is contingent on whether the settlement in the other lawsuit is approved by the court. So if it's approved by the court, then that will shield everybody from any issues on the buyer side. So just some news there. Now, again, we don't know the final outcome of that yet because the court hasn't approved that settlement, but there has been a settlement that has been agreed to. Now we'll see if the court approves that settlement or not. So just so that you know what's going on there. The other thing that happened this week, I think it was yesterday or the day before, Remax has been acquired by Real Brokerage, and so Remax, the company Remax Holdings, has been acquired, and probably the biggest impact for this is that Real has immediately made a move to try to recruit Remax agents. So this is really a bad situation for the franchise owners that own Remax franchises because the company that just acquired them is now going to try to poach their agents. So it'd be interesting how that all plays out in the long term. Uh, the fees at Remax for agents are a lot higher than they are at Real for agents, and so I think that agents feeling that hey, we're now owned by Real, we might as well just join Real. Maybe making that jump from their Remax brokerage where it's expensive to a less expensive option. So just so that you know that that's happening, if you have friends out there that work with Remax, I have some friends working for Remax. It'll be interesting to see what shakes out from all of that. But what we're also seeing that just also shows us there's a consolidation in real estate going on. Howard Hanna owns Tucker, so you find companies that acquire other companies, and it makes for bigger companies. So that's what's going on out there in the industry. Any questions on those things that are going on in the industry?
Your Remax friends should come here
Yes, they should, because we're a lot less expensive, even
for
than real.
sure.
Yeah, they would save a lot of money and have great technical uh, uh, technology uh, by switching to our brokerage instead of even going to real. So yeah, we're a well-kept secret. Okay. Shifting gears, want to talk about Realty World update. So I'm going to share my screen here and talking. We're on the Relium dashboard here, and so one of the things I always suggest to you is periodically visit the Relium dashboard because you'll find new things there quite frequently. So they have an announcement here. They have a listing presentation, and there's also an open house flyer and some other things that are available to you to customize, and they're there for your use. So these market materials are available, and you just go down here to marketing. And if you click on marketing, it shows you all of our marketing materials. And so your listing materials are right here. And so you can click on that. And what it will do is it gives you options here for listing, presentation for PowerPoint and one to print, and open house flyers and a open house sign-in sheet. So these are just some tools that they have put together on Canva for our use. And so you can feel free to use those if you'd like. Of course, you know that you do have a customizable listing presentation that is in your shared Dropbox as well. So if you want a listing presentation, there's one already kind of customized for you. You don't have to change much to use the one that we have in the shared folder in Dropbox. So if you've not used the one that we have in the share folder and you want some help with that, just let me know, and I can walk you through how that works. But um, we do have one, but they came up with one as well that's branded to Realty World. And then the other thing, so on this page, the main page, you see things like that. Realty World University is starting with weekly classes starting May 6th. So next Wednesday, there'll be will be the first class in the weekly training series, and that class is going to be winning the least listing presentation in today's market. So if you're wondering about some things that you might want to say to win a listing in today's market, this can be a good session for you to attend. As always, Gabrielle Jeans has great information available to you. So just wanted to call that to your attention. And then up here you have Realty World 52, RW52. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but if you're not familiar with it, there's a little video here. Hey, did you know? Talking about Realty World 52. And so I would encourage you, if you don't know what Realty World 52 is, I'm not going to tell you. Go to the Relium dashboard and watch this short video. It's just a short video, but it will tell you all about RW52 and why you might want to use it. Um, so I'm leaving that up to you to go there and look at that video. And again, this is on Relium.net is where you go to find your Relium dashboard, and you just log in there with your Realty World login to view those things that are on there. So any questions on that? I'm going to stop my share for the time being. Uh, any questions on the Relium dashboard and things that are there? Nope. Okay. We have questions on any topic, anything that you want to ask, just ask your question, and unmute yourself, by the way, if you're going to ask a question. Otherwise, we won't hear you. Are there any questions on any topic?
Hey,
Okay.
would Does it qualify? So on my listing in North Harbor, I know if I get a sign call, I can show it no matter what because I'm the listing agent and I'm doing what's best for my seller.
Right.
If Whitney gets a sign call and can't make it, but I can go show it for her, am I acting as a agent for Whitney and I can go ahead and show it because it's her listing and I'm just opening the door? Or would I need a buyer broker agreement with the sign call because I'm not Whitney?
Um, I believe the answer to that question is yes, you can show it on a sign call without a written uh, agreement because the listing's owned by the brokerage. Okay, so the anybody showing that listing is showing it on behalf of the seller. Now, in order to write an offer on that listing or to work with that buyer on another listing, it would require a buyer broker agreement. But to show that listing on behalf of the list agent for the seller would not be, you would not be required to have that buyer broker agreement. That's my understanding.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Same would be if you're holding an open house for an agent, another agent's listing. Same thing. You're really representing the seller in that uh, situation. But again, if you're going to start working with a buyer that comes through the open house, then you would need a buyer agency agreement with that buyer. Okay. Okay. No other questions? How about coming soon listings? Anybody have a coming soon listing? Okay, my listing in Carmel is still coming soon. It'll be probably sometime after we close in May. We close on their house they're buying in late May, so I think it'd be sometime after that, probably early June, and I'll have that two-story in Carmel with some pretty nice updates in it. Nice backyard and stuff. So keep that in mind as coming soon. Did sell the listing in Broad Ripple. We got an accepted offer on it this week. So that is off the market pending closing, of course. Um, if there's no coming soon listings from anybody else, we're going to move to the forms. And I just want to review some forms that we don't get to use very often, if at all. Some of us have never used these forms, but they're important forms nonetheless. And because we don't use them often, I think it's worthwhile to take some time to um, uh, look at those forms and see what they look like and just so that we're familiar with them in case we do need to use one of them. So the first form I'd like to talk about is the disclosure of interest addendum. And this is an important addendum. So basically, if you have any interest in a real estate transaction, then you have to disclose that interest to a potential buyer. You use this form, the disclosure of interest addendum, and you put the date and the property, and then who you are that is making the disclosure. Now, understand that this is an Indiana law. So if you fail to fill out this disclosure, you're in violation of Indiana law. So you could actually be prosecuted under Indiana law. So it's important to understand that this is not something to be taken lightly, but this is a requirement. So basically, this reads pursuant to Indiana law, and then it gives the law, a broker shall not directly or indirectly buy, offer to buy, sell, offer to sell, or receive compensation for property in which the broker owns an interest unless the broker shall disclose in writing his interest to all parties to the transaction and the fact that the broker holds a valid real estate license. In addition, Article 4 of the Code of Ethics requires that realtors who have present ownership interest in property for sale or lease or contemplated interest to purchase or lease property must disclose in writing the existence of such interest to all parties to the transaction prior to any party signing any agreement. So this disclosure has to occur prior to an offer being made. So what that means is if we have an interest that needs to be disclosed to the buyer broker, and that's in agent to agent remarks. It also needs to be disclosed to the buyer, potential buyer. So that needs to be in the buyer comments where the buyer can see it. And then this form needs to be uploaded so that the buyer's agent can download this form and sign it and turn it in with their offer so that all of this happens before an offer is written, not after an offer is written. So this is an important document. And again, if you fail to do these steps, you're in violation of Indiana law and the Realtor Code of Ethics. So you have two violations there. So it could be it's pretty stiff issue there. So this disclosure goes on to say disclosure all interested parties. The parties are advised that the real estate broker listed above, number one, has an ownership interest in the property being sold or being purchased. Box there has familial relationship with the seller or prospective buyer. In other words, you're representing someone who is a family member, represents the broker's firm or any broker thereof, and represents an entity which the broker or member of broker's immediate family has a legal interest. Okay, so that needs to be disclosed in this whole process. So that is uh, that is an important document to keep in mind, along with the other disclosures in the BLC that need to be made as well. That's one form. Now we'll
Question,
take a
Mr.
look.
Jim. I have a question.
Yes,
I filled it out on on my listing, but so if I buy a property, I have to fill it out too. I thought it was only for if you were going to sell a property.
if you're buying a property that you're
Mm-hmm.
going to own, or that
Yes.
you have an ownership interest in, let's say an LLC that you're part of, and
Mm-hmm.
that LLC is buying the property, you have to disclose that you have an interest in that property. Yes.
And if my brother wants to buy a house, I need to do that form too because it's my brother.
Yes. Yes, because you have a family relationship and that has
Hmm.
to be disclosed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have a question on that? It's an important one because it's a violation of a law for failure to do that. Now let's take a look at buyer's notice of termination. Um, so this is a notice that buyers use if they want to terminate an agreement. So buyer's notice of a termination, it's attached and made part to the purchase agreement. Buyer is exercising buyer's right to terminate the purchase agreement for the following reason. And so it outlines the reasons that you might use this form. Okay. A, Buyer has not received a signed mutual release from seller's primary purchase agreement. Buyer may terminate as indicated in buyer's backup offer. So this is used to terminate a backup offer. So if you've made a backup offer and now you want to terminate it and you didn't get a mutual release, you can just terminate it using this form. Okay. Or item B, an inspection has revealed a previously undisclosed defect and buyer is within the time limit providing an as-is addendum to terminate. So if you've written an as-is addendum and you have a major defect that shows up, so in other words, the buyer is saying, I'm buying the property as is, but I went ahead and inspected it. I see a major defect here. This is how they terminate. Right here. They check this box and then they sign the form. So those are the two uses that a buyer has for this form. So any questions on buyer's notice of termination?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
So, I had a listing and I forgot to disclose defect, and the other agent she was mean to me, but it's okay. So, do you get in trouble for that, or you just use that form and that's enough?
Okay. You have to disclose any defect that you know of, irregardless of whether it's on a disclosure form.
So,
So let me let
say
me
you
give you a
forgot.
for instance.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so your seller fills out a seller's disclosure,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have an inspection. A buyer buys the property, you have an inspection, and you found out that the sewer line is clogged, and the buyer backs out of the deal. And the seller doesn't want to amend the seller's disclosure. Now, the first problem is the seller should amend the seller's disclosure. And if you continue with that listing without that seller's disclosure being amended, then it is resident upon you to disclose that to any potential buyer. So you would need to call the buyer's agent and let them know when they show the property, by the way, the seller, there is a problem with the sewer line. The seller has not disclosed that on the seller's disclosure. So you are required to disclose anything that you know about the property that would be a material defect. Okay? Anybody?
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that's buyer's notice of termination. Now, there's also one for the seller to use, and the seller actually has more ways to terminate agreement than a buyer does. So let's take a look at the seller's notice of termination. Okay, so the seller's notice of termination is that the property it lists the property up here, and seller is exercising seller's right to terminate this purchase agreement for the following reason. So here's all reasons that they could terminate a purchase agreement. First of all, buyers failed to deliver to timely submit earnest money in the amount of X number of dollars. So they could check that box if they haven't received earnest money within the required time, 2 days, whatever it says in the purchase agreement. They could terminate the purchase agreement based on that and now accept another offer um, just by terminating. Uh, B, buyer failed to timely submit cash proof of funds. So let's say it's a cash deal and they said that they'll give you proof of funds within 2 days and they haven't delivered proof of funds to you, you can terminate, the seller can terminate the uh, purchase agreement based on that. Buyer served an inspection response requesting credits or repair in violation as is addendum. Okay, so the as is addendum says that the only recourse for a buyer is to terminate the purchase agreement. If the buyer submits a buyer's inspection response asking for repairs, the seller may terminate the purchase agreement based on that. In other words, they don't have to respond. They can just say, purchase agreement is terminated and move on to the next buyer. Okay, so now a lot of times we run into that where, hey, the seller would be willing to go ahead and repair that major defect. That's a conversation to have between buyer and seller and buyer and seller's agents. And if everybody agrees, then you could submit that seller or buyer response, inspection response, uh, based on the agreement of all the parties that the seller's not going to try to terminate the agreement. But you have to walk carefully if you've done an as-is addendum, because they could unilaterally, the seller then could unilaterally terminate the purchase agreement based on that, receiving that response. Um, Sellers closed on the primary transaction, which terminates buyer's backup offer. Okay, so again, they have a backup offer on the property and they close on the primary transaction. Then they check this box and it terminates the backup offer. So that's how you terminate a backup offer. And then the final way is seller accepted another offer which terminates buyer's limited purchase contingency right. So this is called the sudden death one. This isn't a first right. This is a sudden death where they don't have a first right. This terminates that prior purchase agreement upon acceptance of a new purchase agreement. So that's on the limited purchase contingency right. I don't ever recommend that you write one of those in the first place, but it can be terminated unilaterally. So this is unilateral termination. You see that there's no place for the buyer to sign because the buyer doesn't have to sign. The buyer does not have to agree to terminate on any of these particular items. Okay, make sense? All right, that's the seller's notice of termination. Now we have um, the withdrawal of an offer counter offer. Uh, and the withdrawal of the counter offer, you put what the offer number is or the counter offer that you're putting in here and that you're withdrawing and date and all the property. And it just says that you're withdrawing this. The undersigned hereby withdraws the offer or counter offer to the purchase agreement dated such and such. So this is how you withdraw it. Now, to be effective, a withdrawal must be delivered to the seller buyer prior to acceptance and delivery of such acceptance. So anyone, either buyer or seller, can withdraw an offer or counteroffer, but it has to be done prior to the acceptance of an offer. And note that that uh, so if they've already accepted it, you can't withdraw it once they've accepted it. So what happens when you send this over and simultaneously they've accepted the offer? Well, you just have to compare the times. That's why there's a date and time on here, and there's a date and time that a purchase agreement was accepted or an offer was accepted. So if this date and time is earlier than the date and time it was accepted, then the offer's withdrawn. If this is later than, then the acceptance would rule in that because it wasn't delivered prior to acceptance. So, any questions on withdrawal form? Okay. And then another form that I think is important to use is the final walkthrough form. And so if you look at the final walkthrough form, basically this says the purchase agreement provides that the seller will deliver possession of property to the buyer in the same condition as on the date of purchase agreement was executed, normal wear and tear accepted, and subject to any agreed upon repairs being completed. Before closing, buyers should verify the condition of the property meets the terms of the purchase agreement. So this is just a document that you did a walkthrough and that you did it on this date. Or if the buyer chooses not to do a walkthrough, you check this box and say buyer chooses not to walk through or review the property prior to closing. And basically, what this does is make a hold harmless for you and the listing broker or the buyer, you as a buyer's agent, that they know that they had an opportunity to do a walkthrough. They elected to either do it on such and such date or they didn't do it. And so that's what this form is for. So actually on every closing, we should have this form. I don't know that I see it on every closing. In fact, I seldom see it, but it is there and we should use it.
I only use that one when they don't do a walkthrough. If you
Yeah,
want it for, I can start
you
adding it,
definitely want to use it then, but
yeah,
I
that's
would even use it when they do a walkthrough. It's like the builders when they do their when you go into the builder and you meet at the home prior to closing, right? And they go through their things and they have you sign that you did it. Same thing with a final walkthrough. If they're doing it, just print out that form, take it with you, check it off, and have them sign it that they've completed that walkthrough. That way, there's no question ever that the walkthrough was done. So I would recommend using it. I would stop short of requiring it, but I think it's a good thing for us to use. And it's a simple, easy form. So you can just print it out and check one box and date it and they sign it. And so it's not a big deal like a checklist or anything that you have to fill out, but it's just one more thing to keep yourself safe. So that's all that I have in terms of forms that I wanted to go through. We'll have some other forms maybe in the future. Any questions on anything we've discussed today?
No.